This is a hot water bottle. And according to the internet, Americans have never seen one, which is kind of strange because I grew up with one that looked exactly like this. If you believe American reaction videos, you would think Britain invented everything from hot water that's portable, to the rolling hand towel, which has left me with a lot of questions. When Americans arrive in Britain, they act shocked. Not at castles, not at history, but at objects. From towels that roll to electric tea kettles to having two taps that have two different temperatures of water. And every time the American says, I've never seen this in my life, which suggests two things. Either Britain's been inventing things and not telling the world, or Americans have collectively forgotten their childhood. Today, we investigate.
No way. No way.
First, let's start with the rolling hand towel, a little piece of fabric that rolls out slowly like it's questioning its career choices. Sometimes it's a little damp. Some people say, what is this? Some people say, how does this work? I've seen many videos of Americans confused all over Europe by these hand towels, which is confusing to me as an American because I grew up with these in school. Do you know what happens when you leave paper hand towels around young children with an access to water in a sink? You end up with a ceiling decoration. These were in my elementary school and my junior high school for those very reasons I mentioned earlier, to be more cost effective when it comes to crowd control with unruly children. Teachers didn't want to ask, what is this? They wanted to prevent this. So rolling hand towels are installed in many places in America. I'm just not sure how we forgot. That brings us back to the hot water bottle. Usually bright red, little rubber, kind of oddly medical feeling. In British culture, this is considered a loved artifact. Now, people have been using heated stones and metal containers for centuries before vulcanized rubber was invented in the 1800s. And that is when the rise of the glorious hot water bottle began. It became widespread in Britain and Germany and America in the 1800s with this invention. I know this invention well as it is something my grandma always had, or as I call her, my meemaw. It was for anything. Cramp, headache, bad day, little cold. You grab out the hot water bottle and you fill it up and everything will be a-okay. So Americans absolutely have these hot water bottles. Now, a lot of people did go on to use the electric heating pads, but we also have lower frequency electricity in the States, so maybe that's why it's a little less scary than if you were to plug yourself into the high frequency that you have here. But we have these. They're not new. I don't know why. Again, people are so surprised. The biggest difference isn't the object, it's that Britain never stopped using it while America changed.
Lord have mercy. I know if you're watching this video that you've probably had the sickness.
Another famous thing we grew up with in Kentucky was the hot toddy. Now, it's seen as more of a seasonal drink here in Britain, but in Kentucky, it's a form of medicine. The hot toddy appeared in 18th century Scotland, which makes sense why it would be very common in Kentucky. As I covered in my accents video, a lot of Scottish and Irish immigrants ended up in Kentucky, and that's why a lot of our pronunciations of words are very similar. The word toddy itself is from the Indian word tari, which means warm palm wine, and was adapted into the vernacular in Britain during the Great British Empire and the Great East India Trading Company. They brought the word back and it incorporated into daily use for a delicious drink. By the 1800s, this drink had immigrated to America. We know this because it appears in a cocktail recipe by William Cocktail Bouthabees. The World's Drinks and How to Make Them, 1891. A little hot water, a little honey, a little lemon, a little sugar, and a whole lot of bourbon. This wasn't just about being cozy. This was triage. Now remember, America did have prohibition, where somehow they convinced the government to ban alcohol, so you could actually get these as medicine because even though alcohol was banned by the Volstead Act, there was a way to have medicinal whiskey prescribed by your doctor. So that's probably where these two ideas merged, and hot toddy went from a seasonal delicious drink to quite literally a medical necessity. Different cultures, same liver. Now let's discuss the other anomaly to Americans, having two taps when you go to use a sink. Now, this is exactly how my grandma's sink in her bathroom is to this day. I grew up with this one side that will burn the skin off your hand, and the other straight from Antarctica. But the reason two taps became popular was because in the 19th century in Britain, plumbing was installed in a gravity format. Now, similar to today, hot water was kept in a non potable container that was continuously heated, whereas cold water came from the mains. Obviously, these could not mix because potable water and fresh to drink water, two different things. That's why you're commonly not supposed to drink hot water straight from the tap, especially if it comes from a hot water heater, because that water is setting inside that heater to get warm. Now, there are different things today, heat pumps and different ways that water is heated, so that's less of an issue. But in the States, a lot of places are still hot water heaters that hold that water and keep them warm. But again, if you go to a hotel from the 1930s that's kept its beautiful decor intact, or my grandma's house, these two taps are really common, and you can still see them in all these various pictures in different places all over America. So I'm confused if people just don't wash their hands and dry them on the rolling towel, and that's why they're seeing it for the first time, which is a bit more concerning. I think another issue here is that Americans consistently feel the need to update things that work, whereas Britain embraces things that work, and if it's not broken, don't fix it. And that's not saying the two tap system is better or worse. There are definitely situations where having the blended temperatures of water is more beneficial, and times that having two separate ones work great. In the US, this old tap is replaced. In the UK, this becomes part of a house's personality. And our last stop on the surprise train, tea kettles. Come on, Americans. We have tea kettles. Why do you act so surprised? Also, don't believe these posts where Americans are microwaving their tea bag. I have never seen that happen in my life, and that would shock most Americans. That's crazy. That is not something we do. I feel those people are just rage baiting the internet, and it seems to have worked. Now, electric tea kettles are less common in America, but that goes back to what I mentioned earlier about the electricity. In the UK, your electricity runs at 230 volts, and in America, it runs at 120 volts. So your tea kettles heat up twice as fast. My tea kettle here sounds like a jet engine taking off, and it is hot so fast. Also, the other factor is in the States, a lot of stovetops or hobs are gas powered, and here they tend to be more convection, conduction, electric powered hobs. And that changes how it goes. In the States, I always had a stovetop tea kettle, and it is kind of fun to have that little whistle going off. Americans didn't reject the tea kettle. They just kept the older format of heating it over a fire because our electricity is slower. And if there's anything we know about America, it's incredibly impatient. So what's going on with all these reaction videos? Are Americans really discovering Britain for the first time? Or are they just discovering what was at their grandparents' house and they didn't pay any attention? Most of these so-called British oddities are just older solutions, cheaper solutions, more reliable solutions. They're not exotic. They're wonderful things that survived. So the real culture shock for me here isn't the tea kettle. It isn't even the hot water bottle. It's that realizing my childhood is now considered foreign infrastructure. Britain didn't invent all these things. They just didn't get bored of them, which historically explains a lot. And if there's any other objects that you want to know the origins of and if us weird Americans use them, also let me know in the comments below. Please give this a like and subscribe and do that little hype thing if it's down there, and I'll see you in the next one.